Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you are listening to or watching Radio Maine. Today I have with me artist Scott Bowe. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Scott, I have to start with this beautiful piece behind us because blue is one of my favorite colors, and you have a lot of blue in this piece. What's the name of this piece, and describe it for people?
Well, this piece right here, let me preface by saying I'm a blue guy too. I love the blues, the whole spectrum, and I enjoy playing with that. The name of it is Balmy, and I'd like to also say before I get into it a little is that I always title my paintings after the fact, after they've been done. I never have a preconceived idea of really what I'm going for necessarily. I can get a little more detailed on that later. But in this, so this to me, again, I like to keep the names pretty nebulous and, for pretty obvious reasons, so you're not suggesting or putting some kind of thought into somebody's mind about what it is. So my paintings and my titles of my paintings, and this one, Balmy, like I said, they're always about a feeling. The words I choose for my titles are about a feeling. So, I mean, Balmy, to me, when I was finished and I kind of felt it, it's always a feeling. It felt just very relaxed and calm, very like balm, just it's soothing, right? It was very soothing to me. However, I could have taken the name to, with the word balmy as being mad and crazy. Like he's acting a little balmy right now, isn't he? So that's what I was referring to when I choose titles. I don't like to use one that, that's what it is. So I should start thinking that way. This was also, let me get into this, the creation of this. This is called fluid acrylics, which are different than your normal tube, acrylic paints, meaning the viscosity of it is a lot thinner. It's a little more watery and pourable. That's why they call them pores. And this style of painting actually originated in the 30s by accident by I can't remember his name. It was a Mexican artist, and he basically invented fluid painting. So it's a matter of taking the whole canvas when it's blank and filling it all with what I call just white space. So you take a polymer, like a clear polymer, and you add the white to it, and you basically drench the whole canvas is all wet, and then you play with the colors, and again, it's a feeling. It's what feeling am I feeling right now? What am I going for? And it's all very in the moment. Acrylics dry very quickly. So it's always like, okay, I need that color, but I don't have that color. I got to mix that color. So when I got really into the painting, I started to think of it more as an ocean-esque, tropical, breezy, balmy type of atmosphere. To answer your question, that's my long-winded answer.
Well, it is very beautiful, and now that you're saying this, I can see the two different ways of potentially looking at the piece. When people acquire your pieces for their homes, do they ever come back to you and give you a story around the piece that they chose and why?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've had many people come back to me, and well, it's interesting with people that purchase art buyers that purchase art for the purposes of the true purpose to put it in their home and appreciate it, that they it resonates with them, and I've had people call me and say, and really harp on me about, why did you name it this? Why is it called that? Because what I see is this. And I know this isn't directly answering your question, but I really, as an artist, one of the biggest things I enjoy the most is hearing what other people see. So yeah, I've had many instances where people have contacted me after purchasing a piece, or my mind when you initially asked the question was it commission pieces where you're collaborating, of course, with the person, and you can, yeah. I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah.
So that must be an interesting process. If somebody's commissioning a piece from you,
Yes,
and your pieces are very abstract, and you just described your process as being very in the moment. So how do you bring those two things together where somebody else has a different idea of what in their mind might be what they're commissioning, but they've asked you to do it?
right. That is, I can't replicate this. Okay. I mean, I can come close, but no, this is a lot about gravity, movement, a lot of different techniques. But when you're doing a commission piece, for example, I had this one guy who from New Jersey, and he had just had bought this huge house, big cathedral ceilings, and he took me through it virtually with his iPad, and he had this big space for a triptych for three in a row, and he wanted them like 50 by 40 for three of them. And yeah, gets a little tricky, especially with that dimension. So I started asking quite a lot of questions when I'm in that kind of situation. Well, first of all, like, what kind of lighting is it under? That I always change my lighting for a commission to make it represent with the way they want to see it. But to work with somebody when you're an abstract painter or an expressionist, and to have somebody else tell you what direction to go in, like you were saying or asking, was it hasn't been a big problem, to be quite honest with you. I can understand how that you can't do exactly maybe what they want, but you're always, and that's the beauty of it. You get creative together, but it's still abstracted, but in more in their color palette and more of their suggestion. But it can be done for sure.
Well, I know that some artists prefer not to do commissions.
That has always sincerely blown my mind. I guess I respect a portion of that philosophy. For me, I think it's one of the best things in the world. I absolutely love the collaboration between a buyer and somebody that's going to have my painting on their wall. It's going to be, because I view painting as being alive. It's living. I know that sounds kind of esoteric, but it's purposefully done. It's got energy. It's resonating. It has an affect. It moves you. Hopefully, that's the purpose. Yes, hopefully. And so, yeah.
As you're talking about this collaboration, I'm reminded of the fact that you had a completely different career, which I think still continues to this day, as an actor. And acting is also very much both individualistic and collaborative.
Yeah, it's ambivert. It's extroverted and introverted at the same time.
So tell me about how the work that you did as an actor has either contrasted with the work that you're doing now as an artist, or contrasted against, or been similar to the work that you do as an artist.
Yeah, I definitely would suggest, because I've given it much thought and I've experienced moments where, as an actor, well, let me just say that colors represent emotion inherently. I'm speaking like an authority now. Okay, there's an inner palette. I always view things when I was an actor as well, and if I was doing a scene or in a play, or it didn't really matter. It was about color. It's like an explosion of color. Colors have emotion. I think we all know this. But I don't think some people just don't really acknowledge how impactful that color can be, that everybody actually does have this inner palette of colors that represent different emotions. So with that said, acting was very similar to painting in the sense that it's about color. For me, it's not about memorizing lines. It's about a feeling. So here you go with the feelings. The colors, right, precede the feeling. So it's been extremely helpful. And I'll say this. I'll also say this. This was a big aha moment. When I moved to Los Angeles, I auditioned and got accepted to a school called Groundling School, improv. And I was there for 2 years. And that, I've always kind of made a reference to painting in retrospect now, as a blank canvas. Because then just think about it. Okay, 2 people on an open stage, blank canvas. No idea what you're going to say. No idea what kind of paint you're going to apply. No idea what the first color is going to be, which would kind of suggest the next color, like a conversation, so to speak. And so it's a very vulnerable place, which I find attractive. And also, I think it's a perfect place for creation. I think that vulnerability of having an open stage, open canvas, and having the whole color theory of emotion in your hands, so to speak, resonate both with acting and with painting. The biggest difference is the solitude. Yes, acting, you sound crazy a lot of times because you're learning your lines and you're walking around your house or your studio, whatever, and you're just talking to yourself, And yeah, we always used to say, but it's just a crazy house. We're just crazy people, But it's yeah. No, I think they besides that one aspect of the performance is for art, right? Is to have it displayed, and then being able to maybe discuss it or talk about it. But with acting, of course, it's a presentation. It's a physical presentation. Yeah, performance.
What you're describing is so interesting to me because I do think we think of art as being static, but we talked about just a few minutes ago this idea that not only do you interact with the art, but the person who has the art on their wall interacts with the art on a regular basis. So it's really not static. It might look two-dimensional on the wall, but it's kind of continually interacting with whatever our emotional state of the moment is, really.
That's a really good way to put it. because I think it can change. Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people have bought a piece of art or acquired a piece of art or made a piece of art that at one point in time in their life it meant and felt had its own attributes. But then as you go through life and time passes by and you have different experiences, that it may take on a different form of feeling, and or you may see something different. I don't like I that's I would follow up with that by saying that that's a lot of the reason why I've been drawn to abstract, particularly abstract expressionism, is because about feeling, how it can change. And I've heard people say that have a lot of art in their home that it's kind of like having friends around, when there's nobody else there. Like they're truly invested. They're speaking. Their friends are there. They're having a conversation. It sounds weird, but it's they're alive. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, and it's interesting because some days when you walk in, you're right. You're not paying attention. You get off of work and everything. You're just kind of right in your own self. But other days you can walk in and the sun can hit the wall in a certain way. It can, light up something that you had forgotten was there. And then all of a sudden your mind is activated again. You're interacting with the art. And it's an interesting and, as you say, dynamic process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me about your relationship with the ocean.
With the ocean?
I mean, I know that you've lived on both coasts.
Yeah.
You grew up in Connecticut. You lived in Maine. You spent a semester at sea.
Yes. So, that's an interesting question. My relationship with the ocean is very deep. No pun intended. It's very, like you just said, I grew up in Connecticut, but spent every summer of my life in Freeport, Maine, and on the water. Very fortunate. My great-grandfather had purchased a parcel of land on the water way, way back. And it's still in the family today. And we had a summer home also on that property. So every summer of my life would be revolved around being on the water, no TV, just being on the water, clam digging, water skiing every day, fishing, boating, kayaking, going out to islands, exploring the rocky coastline, which is what it is. It's an ebb and flow tide, so it's always changing, the scenery. You never know what the tide's going to bring in. It's also really cool to go scavenging with my kids. But when I was growing up, it's ingrained in me. You brought up various aspects of the ocean, but of my experiences. But the colors, for example, even in this painting, are representative. When I started to, like I was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do initially when I get to the blank canvas. But these colors are all, people like to think of the ocean as blue or teal. It's not, right? It looks that way, but when you really get down to it, there's a think of seaweed and think of seagrass and think of the mud that the clam diggers go through and the seashells and the just the sediments in the water and it takes on a whole new life of its own, and you just start to feel more like what the term you used, a relationship with this environment, and it makes you more aware of, in my opinion, of all the different colors that encompass the ocean. So, with that said, yeah, and then I've had the unbelievable I went on this program. It was for 100 days, and it was, like you said, called Semester at Sea, and that we literally circumnavigated the globe. I remember, and I don't know why this just came to me, but I was standing next to. I went on alone. There's 450 college students going around the globe on a cruise ship to 9 different countries. I didn't know anybody. And I just remember standing there, and I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's just whatever. And we're just looking off the big bow, and this kid looks at me, and he's like, "Man, that's a lot of water." And I'm just like, "Yeah, we're going around the world. There's a lot of water out there." Yeah. And so it was unbelievable. If you going to see. Let's just quickly say the differences between, crossing the Atlantic. We went down, to first to Venezuela, then to Brazil, but then across the Atlantic to Cape Town, South Africa, and just seeing birds that live in nowhere. There isn't any land in sight. Going to Malaysia and the water, I've never seen water like how pristine and green and just almost fictitious. It's almost not real. It's so beautiful. Same thing with the sand. We went to Angel Falls, the highest waterfall in the world. I think it's 3 or 100 times 30 times, 100 times higher than Niagara Falls in Venezuela. And the sand was all pink, just truly just pink sand. And so, yeah, and I could go on, of course. I mean, but there's a huge part of me I'm also a Pisces. So I'm a fish.
Honestly, I could have guessed that.
You could have guessed that? You okay? And yes, so I am very much a fish. I love the water, and I've spent a lot of time around the water. And now I get the pure enjoyment of having my kids who are twins, 9-year-olds, and bringing them out and giving them the same experiences, not around the world yet, but down in Freeport on the water. And it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. There's nothing, it's cathartic to me. There's truly jumping into salt water, the ocean, feels electric. Again, back to feeling. It truly feels that way to me. Yeah. I bring my kids down during COVID. We stayed down in the beginning for the first 3 weeks down at my parents' house, which we would go down to the shore, and I'd say, okay, now we're going to ground ourselves, and we would put our hands in the salt water. Don't talk for 5-10 seconds. Okay. And you just feel amazing. I'm being sincere. I really think the water is that powerful. That's enough of water.
Just to join in with what you're saying, in traditional Chinese medicine, the water element is associated with the organ system of the kidney and the bladder. And it's considered your inborn qi. This is the energy that we're all born with. And it's the thing that we are supposed to try to preserve to the extent possible over the course of our lives.
Right.
I mean, we all come from water. We are all made of water. We come from water. And eventually, who knows what happens to all of our molecules when we die. But most likely, many of them will join back with water.
Very interesting thought.
I mean, your relationship with water is perhaps a little bit more tangible than many people's, but it's still pretty important to all of us, really.
Yeah, I mean, hearing what you just said, it makes perfect sense. I mean, yeah, we were enveloped in water. We're floating, or we are fish, I guess, to some extent. But no, yeah, I mean, we all have an affinity for water, I would say.
And do you think that because there's so much of the water element in your work that people are attracted to it in part for that reason?
Well, let me ask you, do you think that's what it is? Do you think there is? Is that what you see? a lot of water in my work?
Well, I mean, I've known your work for a while. I've known you for a while.
You are right, by the way.
I mean,
but I'm just
yeah.
Well, I want to hear what you guys see.
Well, this is me, and actually, it's always been my response to your work is that it's in part the fluidity of it and the motion, and it's a very changeable sort of approach to seeing the world, which for me is very much water oriented, but other people may see it differently.
Well, that's a fact. The world is primarily water, but no, I agree with you 100%. Like I said, I mean, I love blues. I love water. I like effervescent colors that represent like seashells and stuff like that. And most people do see a lot of water in my work, or more topographical, looking at objects in an environment or a mountainscape, or I get subaquatic a lot. Like, it's underwater, it's a life underwater, and you can get as esoteric and metaphysical about it as you want. There's I would say topography. People have always said it looks very topographic, and then also subaquatic, or actually an ocean. Yeah.
Well, but even when I think about topography, isn't topography also a relationship between kind of soil and trees and water? I mean, and when you're describing your semester at sea, all I could think of were, in the cliff, the white cliffs of Dover, and, the granite cliffs of Maine, and even that interaction between the landscape and the seascape. So it's just kind of interesting to think about the way that you've experienced the world and how it's been manifest in the art that you've created.
That's an interesting perspective. I agree with that 100%. And I like also to do a lot of what a lot of artists call a negative space. I don't like the word negative, and so it's white space. So it kind of gives it that island-esque feel to it. Yeah.
Has your art evolved?
Oh, tremendously.
I mean, I actually ask this because I know the answer to this question. Because I remember when you first started back up with your art again.
Yes.
And then over time where you've wanted to go and needed to go. But tell me about that. Was there a place where you kind of said, okay, well, I think I'm done with that now, and I would like to move on to something else?
Very interesting question. I started, I'm self-taught. I say I'm self-taught, but I was taught by friends out in Los Angeles that were represented. They were real artists and actors, and they, just hanging out late nights in their studios and stuff like that. I always took it as just fun. It was just fun, and never once in my life, ever once, did I say to myself, I'm going to be an artist. I want a painter, because artist encompasses a lot, right? So, I mean, a painter, never once, no. But it was more about, in retrospect, I learned a lot by working with these friends, just about, I didn't even know what gesso was. I truly, but getting back to the evolution, I started out learning these techniques and using brushes and palette knives and doing some pourings and just different styles. I started out using brush only. The typical, I would sketch. I started out actually with more surrealism, like crooked buildings, and these works actually, I don't even think they've been seen, but these were what I started out. So it was more like surreal. It was abstract, but it's surreal. You could still make out the figure, that's a building, whatever. But it's evolved in the sense that, man, this is a really hard question because I enjoy doing all of it. But in terms of me as an artist evolving with the craft, when I got into fluid acrylics is when I really, really started to get extremely passionate about it. And I don't really like using this example, but I'm going to because I can't think of anything else. But when I did change from doing other types of work, which is always, again, like been abstract, but not fluid necessarily at all. A lot of gestural type of stuff, but it's kind of what's expected, not expected, but it's what resonated the most with the larger audience of spectators. That's where my art started to sell. Let's say that is when I really kind of hit a sweet spot. But now and people took to that. It resonated with them, and it's great. I mean, I've developed a following because of it. But I'd just say the one thing is it's hard to go back. You can't. It's because people are used. It's like a sitcom actor. You can't get out of that role unless a couple can. You know what I'm saying? But it's I love doing it. I love doing it. It's it's a very hard question, Lisa, because I've done everything from finding a lobster trap during COVID, during our scavenger hunts with my children, and painting it all gold and putting a buoy in gold. It was all just a metaphor for the experience we were going through. Like nobody's going to save you, no matter how much money you have, and I could get way into it. But my point is, I've experimented with so many different kinds. That sometimes it's not even a sellable piece. It's just a piece that's in me that I just kind of want to make, like the lobster trap. It's evolved. It's evolved into different styles, different forms. But then ultimately, I came to find one that I really, really liked, and it was untraditional. That's not why I liked it, but it went. I never have my canvas on an easel like I used to, ever. It's always on the ground. I'm always have a perspective, like a bird's eye perspective of it. I'm holding the crossbars on the back. It's all about movement. It's about patience. It's about composition, I'd say most importantly. And that goes along with all the styles, of course, but it's the composition piece. But that's the best as I can answer that question. It sounds simple, but for me, it's not. I've tried many techniques, but this is the one that feels right and resonates the best with people, I think.
Wow. Your work is gorgeous. So I think you have hit a sweet spot, at least in my humble opinion.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And I've enjoyed my conversation with you today. Every time you and I talk, I learn a little bit more about you. And it's interesting to see how you've evolved over time, as we all do, right?
Absolutely. And same with you. I enjoyed this talk immensely. And thank you to Portland Art Gallery. And I've learned a lot more about you as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I've been speaking with artist Scott Bowe. You may see his work at the Portland Art Gallery or on the Portland Art Gallery website. Scott is also often at our Portland Art Gallery openings if you want to meet him. He's a fascinating person, as I think you probably can tell from our conversation today. I appreciate your being with me today.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for inviting me.